Hello, this is Nathan, better known as CrazyhermitDM, and this is my podcast, The Hermit's Homebrew. Joining me today, live from Nukecon, is Brent from Lang Mooney Studios, and special guest Oakley from Oakleysnerdnook. For our listeners who might not know you or your body of work, because you have teamed up with us, I think, on one giveaway, can you tell us kind of what Oakleysnerdnook and the amazing products you put out?
Yeah, sure.
Because it's all handcrafted, almost solid pieces of wood.
Absolutely.
Most of the time.
Yeah. My name is Oakley. I am the owner and creator of Oakleysnerdnook. So I make handcrafted wooden gaming accessories is kind of the vaguest way I put it, but dice boxes, dice towers, deck boxes, commander stations, stuff like that. And so, like Nathan, you just said, they are pretty much all my main pieces are hardwoods. So, yeah.
Yeah, and all one solid piece. It ain't and everything maybe a ducktailing here or there on certain pieces.
Right, yeah. So pretty much everything that I do, I'll usually route out about 3 boxes at a time or 3 towers at a time, and they're all from the same piece of wood. So even the lids for the boxes, if you set them right next to the bottom body part of the box, you can see the wood grain going from one piece to the next.
So it all looks one solid piece once together.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say there's been a couple times where I've seen your chair wood pieces, I think, or the red stains, and just
Yeah. No, it's really cool. Well, and also it's fun going to go and pick out wood too, because everything the wood mills I go to are all very unique and usually have a really good selection of wood. So if I see something that I don't usually make out of ash per se, ash wood, I might grab it and be like, oh, that's a nice piece. That's a nice piece of ash.
How easy is it to get a hold of ash? Because I've tried to look for raw branches and stuff, and it's almost impossible to find.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about ash, it is actually very common in the Midwest.
Okay.
But there is a locust borer bug that is actually feeding on ash trees, so they burrow underneath the bark of the wood.
Yeah.
And then they the tree actually just dies away.
Oh, okay.
And so a lot of cities are actually, whenever a branch falls or something's happening, they'll actually just cut down the whole tree, because this bug or beetle is an invasive species, and so they're just killing all these ash trees. And so counties and other municipalities are just cutting them down because of that. So that might be one reason why it's hard to find, but it is still fairly common to find at wood mills and stuff like that.
Okay, cool. I'm just looking in the wrong place.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. Most of the stuff that I get, that I use, you can't really get that at Home Depot or Lowe's or any big box stores or anything like that. You got to
go to the local guys. Which
go to the local guys.
You are Omaha local, so
exactly. And I like woodcraft as much as the next wood crafter, but all their wood is incredibly overpriced, and you can just go to a wood mill and pay a third of the cost. So yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah,
because you're getting rid of the retailer that's trying to make a profit.
Exactly.
Getting rid of the Jeff Bezos middleman.
That's right. Essentially, yeah.
You don't go to Amazon for your lumber.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
I first ran into you 2 years ago, I think, at Ditmar's Orchard.
Yeah.
Instantly followed your stuff and just I think took a picture and just posted check this out. This is I haven't seen anything local like this at all.
Yeah, that was
any sort of craftsmanship.
Yeah, that was my first full year. So that was the spring of 2022, I believe.
Yeah.
And I had just started going to conventions August 2021. So by that time, I was still fairly new to it, and that was my second Ren Fair that I had ever done. And now Ren Fairs are actually my best shows.
Oh, nice.
So with a few exceptions, but Ren Fairs are awesome because you get the people that are into role playing.
Yeah.
And then you also have all the people that are into handmade goods too.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
So yeah. Right. Yeah. So that was the first time I met you, and then I know you've been following me for a while, and then
PlanetCon in the spring, you got to present Adam Savage with a piece of your own work.
Yeah, that was super cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
what's the story there?
Yeah, so Adam Savage has been going to a lot of different Comic-Cons and comic conventions, and he was in Kansas City for the Planet Comic-Con, which I'll say is actually one of my best shows that I attend as a salesperson.
Yeah. Okay.
But on an attendee level, it's also my favorite show, because they have much more unique guests like Adam Savage and other people that are more like into the science and not so niche, like same person you see at Comic-Con at every show kind of deal.
Yeah.
But they also have like astronauts as special guests and like that you can do signings or whatnot. But I knew that he was going to be at Planet Comic-Con. I had missed him at a previous year, and I really wanted to like meet him because he's a big idol of mine. And one of the reasons I'm actually doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, Mythbusters, I think we all grew up watching.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so when I knew he was going to be there and I was going to be there too, I decided to make him one of my dice crates, which is my longest box. And I had my logo on there. I had the 3 or 4 different things that he was a part of, Mythbusters, Tested, Savage Industries, stuff like that. And I put that on there, and I wrote a little note on the back of the box, that I laser etched into as kind of like a thank you to everything that he's done. But then on the Friday of that show, his line was fairly short, and I went and waited and got to meet him and gave him the gift, and he was super nice and whatnot. So I'll say by no means am I like extraordinary that I got to go meet him, backstage or anything like that. Right, yeah, exactly. But he was there signing and taking photos with people, but I gave him one of my boxes and whatnot. Cool. And actually at that same show, I had somebody else, just a customer, buy one of my DM screens, and then he went and got it signed by Adam Savage.
Oh, wow.
And then he came back and showed me it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool.
Okay.
That's
definitely something you got to do.
Yeah, it was super cool, so yeah.
That is cool.
And I will speak to the quality of your stuff, because I was over checking your stuff out.
Yeah.
And I was messing with one of the boxes, and I was like, I know they're magnetic, and so I went and I popped it apart. Like, okay, those are pretty decent. So I'm looking, I'm like, I was testing the wood. I'm like, okay, this is really cool. And I wasn't paying attention, and when I put it back together, it snapped closed.
Did you pinch your finger?
And it pinched my finger, and I yelled, and I pulled my finger out. My wife looked at me, and she's like, you okay? I'm like, dang, box bit me. Okay, these magnets are good. Not like the cheap dollar store magnets they're going to wear out.
Right, yeah. So I buy them through K&J Magnetic. They're just online. It's in Pennsylvania, actually. But yeah, they have all kinds of magnets, and these are the ones I've been using for a while now. But yeah, I even have a disclosure sign that I hang from my main sign that says neodymium magnets are very strong. May cause pinching. Be careful. Yeah. Because I've had kids that come up and then they go to like, ow, and I'm like, sorry.
Sorry, but not sorry.
And then you point towards the sign.
Yeah, right. It's like
point to the sign.
I do have a warning.
Exactly.
My boxes bite.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's a mimic. No, yeah. So each individual magnet that I use in all my stuff has 3.5 pounds of force individually. Okay. Oh. So, and when you take the north and south, polarized to get together, that's just going to add a lot more force anyways. So each box has anywhere from 20 to 45 pounds of force, depending on how many magnets there are. Because the dice crates and the deck boxes, those each have 12 magnets per box. So because if you have a stack of 100 Magic cards and there's 200 cards in each box, you want to make sure that the lids are going to stay off.
You don't want them coming open if you accidentally drop it off the table or you're transporting them somewhere.
If you're a gamer geek that drives a Jeep or a big old truck that especially in country roads here in Nebraska and Iowa.
Or the roads in Omaha.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any road in Omaha.
Between winter and road construction seasons.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I can respect that, because I've had commercially made cloth boxes for
sure.
You brought up Magic cards. Back when I played, I would have, and they had one magnet in them, and they would
just holds the flap shut or something.
Fall over on the table.
Oh yeah.
And it would pop open, and now I've got to okay, let me collect my cards real quick.
Right.
And so when I was messing with them, that was one of the things that impressed me. Is that okay? I know this isn't going to just pop open randomly.
Right. Well, and the other thing about them too is while they are strong, and if you just try to pull them straight apart from each other, it is hard to open. But the neat thing about any magnets is just sliding them or twisting them just makes it super easy to
we tried to put one of them together, and the magnets didn't line up.
Right.
It was like nothing. It was like nothing was there.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's how magnets work.
Right. Exactly.
And so you put okay, but then you just twist it like a quarter, also click.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah. No, it's really cool.
It's a good design.
Yeah,
Thank
you.
Thank you. I appreciate
that. So what
that.
was that moment where kind of shifted you into I want to start making these type of things? Obviously, you're a geek and a nerd just like all of us. The same reason why, like me, Brent, and Chase, let's do this podcast. We combined, out of the three of us, we have over 40 years of experience in the hobby.
Yeah.
I think we did the math a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Because we're putting together future projects, and we wanted to use that as a showcase, and we wanted to have our voice heard.
Yeah.
Like, we all have our own stories and our own experiences to share, so.
Yeah, so for me, before I actually started doing this as a business or a side hustle, quote unquote, what a lot of people refer to it as, I had a YouTube channel that I was making cosplay things. I was making props and stuff like that. So I've always been a bit of a maker, just kind of doing random odd and end things that interest me. I'm a big fan of League of Legends.
Yeah.
And so I was often making, blueprints for different weapons on that game, or doing cosplays for different animes that I enjoy, like Jean Arc from Ruby and stuff like that.
That's actually Friday when Chase was actually able to show up for the afternoon. That's one of the things that you two bonded over, because you're wearing a esports shirt with League of Legends.
Yeah. My favorite team that no longer exists, the Golden Guardians. Rest in peace. But yeah, so when the pandemic happened, or right before the pandemic happened, I was doing this YouTube stuff, just kind of making props for fun, because I was a stay-at-home dad full-time at that time, so that was kind of my like hobby, get away, need some relaxed time and whatnot.
It's me time.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so right before the pandemic happened, I was getting my wife together, my sister-in-law, my sister-in-law's husband, to start a D&D campaign, because we had never played before, but I had been wanting to.
Yeah.
And so I was making plans, getting everything happen, and then the pandemic happened. So I like to distinguish. I didn't start playing because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I was getting everything together before, and
we were gonna do it beforehand.
Exactly, and then it just happened. But so that year, 2020, we were playing every week, once a night, or one night a week, and we were all sharing a single set of dice.
Oh.
And if you know what that's like, it's just horrible. I don't ever recommend. Just buy a $10 set of dice or whatever. Just
off Amazon even.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Just don't share dice.
I don't condone buying off a big thing like that, but
it's better than sharing a single set of dice between four people.
Store, but if you have to, go on Amazon, buy the pound of dice.
Especially if you're very budget conscientious.
Yeah. Well, at that time, like, you couldn't go to your local gaming store.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it sucked. And but yeah, we bought the Minds of Phandelver starter book pack, and so it came with a set of dice. And then I actually had countdown dice from playing Magic with my friends. So we were rolling those, and not really. At that point, I didn't really grasp the humble beginnings here, okay?
Like, our countdown dice for Magic, are they like weighted?
No, they're not weighted, but
they balanced?
They're round down dice.
You got the 20 and the 19, the 18 all together.
Right.
But I mean,
I don't think they're unbalanced by any means,
cool.
but you don't have that opposite,
20 and the
20 and the one on opposite sides.
Which is what tabletop gamers look for.
Right.
They don't consider Magic dice like cheating, but
it's not as random as you would want it to be for some reason. But anyways. Everybody each had their own D20, even though it wasn't the right kind of D20. And we were just kind of making do with what we had. About November or so, I was like, okay, for Christmas, I'm giving everybody their own set of dice. I found a custom dice maker based in Ireland, right? Exactly. Yeah. And so in addition to that, I got the dice and I was like, oh, these are cool. I don't think this is enough. So as the crafter that I am, I was like, okay, I want to make a dice box. So let me make a dice box. And so I started looking online. I looked at, the obvious places like Wormwood or some of the cheaper things online. And a lot of the things I found that were reasonably priced were fairly useless. In terms of dice boxes, you had it. Hot take, not so hot, but a lot of the lids and stuff, they were just lids. There's no functionality with them, and most of the magnets that it looked like they were using were not very strong. Okay. So it's the lids would just fall off. Or the lids serve no purpose other than holding your dice in the box themselves.
Gotcha.
And then I looked into more of the luxury, quote unquote line of things, more from like wormwood and whatnot. And it's like, okay, these things are cool, they look great, but they're way so incredibly expensive. And
they're fourth of a rent check for a dice box.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was like, this is just, yes, I can understand how people will pay for this, but it's just, for most people, it's just kind of unattainable.
Yeah, like entry-level stuff, just start kind of, I'm not going to spend $100, $150, $200.
Right, exactly.
for
And so I decided, like, I started looking at what different dice boxes there are, and I came up with what is now the box of holding.
Okay.
And so I made one for all of my party members, and I Dremel engraved their character's first letter of their name on their box.
Oh, nice.
Put a nice polyurethane finish on it, and
So you already had the tools.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yep. I already had all
You didn't like
tools.
go like all in just off a whim.
You know,
Yeah.
get a loan from the bank.
Right? Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about that later. But so like, I had a Forstner bit with a drill press, so I could like do the dice holes, and I had to do a lot of math to make sure it was the right pattern and
Whoa, we don't do
Yeah,
math
no.
here, man. What are you talking
Yeah, I know you guys were saying something about the math between you guys and your years of skills or whatever. I was like, how did that hurt?
You should, because we're doing a raffle here with a D6 off. Like,
Oh, nice.
I've been giving people percentages, so you got like a 16.5% chance of winning here because I have
16.5%.
this.
I'm like, how do you know that?
Huh?
Oh, you have a computer.
Oh, yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
Oh, because I know percentages because I want to know my percentage of winning on a D20.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Okay,
there you
all
go.
right.
Yeah.
I just throw it at the wall and hope for the best.
Hope for the best. But yeah,
doesn't work.
so I had a hand router and a drill press, and so I was like routing things by hand and chopping it to the outer perimeter or
Yeah.
whatever. So the first 4 I made was like almost completely by like hand guiding, like and just
Freehanded it.
yeah, for the most part.
Handmade.
Yeah,
Handmade,
and
yeah.
so I put felt in those boxes, but the felt I did for those was like a sheet of felt that I had to trace out a circle, and I cut it with scissors.
That's
and
literally
then-
what I've done with these 2 dice trays that
Right.
I have. They're
Exactly.
Hobby Lobby trays that I've made for less than $10.
Yeah,
Hobby
but
clearance.
but then eventually I discovered that there's adhesive backed felt. But like that
Oh,
felt,
okay,
I
yeah,
was
that's
like,
what I used.
I was pasting cement glue on the back of the felt, and I was putting contact cement in the box, and then waiting for it to dry, and then setting it in. My system has
Refined.
dramatically increased. Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
alright.
So I gave them to everybody as Christmas presents with their new dice, and they all really liked them and loved them, and I was like, yeah, this is cool. And my wife and my sister-in-law, they're like, you should make some more of these. And I was like, okay. I think at that time I ended up making like 10 more, kind of using a similar process to how I did those. And then at that point, I was just finding other people that were making D&D crafts. Like I found one person that did leather-bound journals, like character journals.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would trade boxes for other people's paraphernalia,
Interesting.
D&D paraphernalia.
Alright.
So and I quickly got through a lot of those, and I had somebody like message me on Instagram because I was still using my YouTube Instagram at that time, and YouTube Instagram, but that domain, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And somebody messaged me. They're like, "Hey, are you selling those boxes?" Because I made some posts about them and whatnot. I haven't, but like I'm open to it. And she's like, "Well, how much would you charge?" And I was like, "Well, I think $50." And so I was like, "Okay." And so she like paid me, and I mailed it to her, and then like that happened like 2 or 3 more times, and so I mailed those out, and then at that point I was like, okay.
This is a good side hustle.
Yeah,
I could do this. all
right. And then I had an old colleague of mine. I used to be a middle school and high school band teacher for a while. And so one of my previous colleagues messaged me and said, "Hey, could you make a dice tower for my husband?" And I was like, okay. Like, yeah, I could do that. And so I looked online. I was looking at a couple different things, and I found like a Plinko style tower.
yeah.
And I was like, oh, that would be fun. I'll try that. So I did that. And the first time I did that, I was like, okay, that was cool. I'm going to do this some more. And at that point, like it didn't match the size of the box of holdings.
Okay.
So I changed that first tower to be the same dimensions as the box of holdings. So that way they could go with each other. And then I was like, oh, what if I put magnets on this and then I can magnetize it to the lid and then there's a nice little catch tray at the bottom.
Epiphany.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And so like my number one priority when I'm designing something is functionality. Back to the finding dice boxes online that like serve no purpose other than being storage vessels. It was like, I want these to be useful. Like, okay, so the box of holding was the thing. The dice towers were a thing. Now they were working together with each other. It was about that point, like early summer, where I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a convention. So I'm from Cedar Rapids, and I found a Comic-Con in Davenport that was in its first year of infancy. So I was like, okay, I'll try this out. And I signed up to it, and I went to it, and a train wreck of a convention. And unfortunately, I actually met a lot of awesome people there. It was just not what it had. A lot of potential, but it didn't quite go as well as I hoped.
We've ran into those.
Yeah. A lot of the other vendors around me and the artists, because I signed up as an artist, because artist tables are cheaper than exhibitor tables at Comic-Cons.
Okay, gotcha.
So at that time, I was signing up for Artist Alley tables, and the other artists around me and the other vendors around me are like, dude, like these are super good. Don't base your expectations off of this convention. Go to other conventions and see like you're going to do a lot better at them.
It's good that the community was like, hey, look, let's be real here, you know?
Right.
It also depends on who's running the con.
Right.
True.
Absolutely. So
certain cons may have a reputation, but if they're being hosted by the wrong people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. They can just dive bomb.
The nice thing about Nukecon is this is the 35th one.
Is it really? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They got their stuff down.
Yeah.
And they're still tinkering with stuff to figure stuff out, because they had
we were talking to two of the organizers earlier, and they were like, yeah, we can't talk too much about it now, but there's something they're looking about changing next year.
Nice, cool.
Like, oh, cool, fantastic.
Good deal. Yeah.
Go for it, man.
Similar idea. Like they were like, yeah, don't set your expectations off this show. Keep doing these. Like these are good things. And I ran into a couple people like a week or two ago at the Quad City Renaissance Fair, and they're like, yeah, I bought one of your boxes, at that was my very first show. And the guy one guy came up to me, he's like, yeah, I have one of your click-clack haversacks, the long one. So the hexagon-shaped ones now, I call the click-clack haversacks.
Okay.
They're essentially 2.0, because when I first started, it was just a thin, long box with 7 holes in it.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I don't know what the number was, but I have one of the first ones. I was like, see if you can find out and let me know. And he's like, I have number 6. I was like, oh, cool. Because I actually have number 5 of those.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, I have number 5. He's like, I have number 6. It was cool, just kind of like that bonding mode. Because hopefully someday like those can be like collector items.
Yeah,
because
this is number 1.
Exactly,
Like,
exactly. Yeah, a little secret. Most of the boxes that I do as prototypes,
yes.
I do put 000 as a number. I keep most of those for myself.
Smart.
Not all of them, but sometimes.
But they also make good display pieces.
Exactly.
And all that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sometimes people commission me to make things, and so usually if that's the case, I will give them 000 since it was their idea, and they're like just having me be the executioner in that situation. So it's just kind of fun to have it's like I have
It'd be
number
cool
one.
to have like a 000 or 1 of 1.
Yeah,
literally
right.
on your thing.
1 of 1.
Right. Yeah. Well, my thing is, I hope I don't ever only make 1 of 1.
Yeah, you wanna,
I want to keep making a lot of those things.
Especially if they're like a good design.
Right. Yeah.
Or have a feature that maybe someone didn't think about.
Right.
Like, no, let's make more of it.
Yeah.
Let's get everyone involved.
Yeah, because there's always adaptation, there's always growth, and in my opinion, like slow growth is always better than fast growth. Same thing for trees and wood, ironically enough.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so the slower the growing tree, the more dense of a wood. And
you learn better that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of just like hot rodding it in.
Yeah. Well, they call them like growth pains, in
Yeah.
big businesses or whatever. And I'm not intentionally trying to pick on Wormwood, but I was watching some of their YouTube stuff, and like they did have a big expansion from stuff, and they did have a lot of growing pains for a little while. And it's like, I don't want to do that, because I'm doing all this by myself.
Yeah. Exactly.
And not that I don't have
That's
support behind
one
the
of the
scenes,
things
but
that like you, me, and Tove were talking about was because you'd go off and play games, and then you're saying like you weren't getting as much traffic. It's like, well, he doesn't have a second person watching his booth like you or me, kind of like
exactly,
the team.
keep an eye on stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
a
they
one
can
man.
sit there
You
and,
are a one man show.
Yeah. No, often a lot of times people will be like, yeah, I saw you guys at this other convention, or it's like, okay, I have your guys' contact information. It's like, no, it's just me.
Well, I think like the whole you guys thing is just the default because
right, yeah.
There's no way you do this by yourself. Of
right.
course you have other people helping you. It's like, no,
it's just me. As I'm saying that, when I say I'm doing this by myself, like I'm making my own products, like I'm going to the shows myself. I do have a guy that I just actually brought on board to manage my website and my like social media stuff, because that is stuff that I don't want to deal with. And if I don't have to, and if I can pay somebody else to do that, like I will. But young kid who just graduated college helping me out with a lot of that. So nice. I'm very, very excited about having that. Again, slow growth.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So,
now you just need to hire someone now to do your taxes and your payroll.
I have never done my own taxes in my life.
Neither have I.
So I will say, like, I am very thankful to not. But there's also so many things when it comes to like owning your own business.
Oh yes.
And then there's personally there's a lot of other different tax things that I have to deal with through extended family or whatnot. So I'm just, you know what you're doing. Please take care of this for me so it's done correctly.
I'll give you a click-clack haversack if you do.
That's right. Yeah. I wish that were the case.
Doing all of the physical labor to make a product.
Yeah.
Putting it down. And then having to switch hats and now spend 2-3 times
being
the
salesperson,
doing the salesperson, being a businessman, being your own accountant, doing all of that on top. It's like, because it's not just, hey, I made a cool thing. Here, look, buy my thing.
Right.
There's so much more involved.
So obviously there's the design work, which is more the upfront part of it. Sometimes there's adaptation, but most of my time is in making the things. It is very time consuming. It's not a short thing. Like just routing out 3 boxes, 3 box of holdings, for example, it takes 2.5 hours to route out on a single piece of wood 3 boxes.
Oh, wow.
And then after that, I have to go and put it in the laser engraver to do the logo and the numbers, and then the sanding and everything like that. So about average, I'm putting about an hour of manual labor time into 1 to 3 boxes, depending on what it is. But
it's a lot more labor intensive. Like I have a 3D printer. I know it ain't as labor intensive unless you have like a resin one like me.
Sure.
The filament ones are very let it do its work and then you can pop it off. But like woodworking, I'm assuming is a whole different ball game.
Yeah, I mean, like you buy it and then you got to plane it down to the thickness, and then after that I got to chop it into or cut it into lengths that fit on my router, and then it routes, and then I take it out, I do the laser, and then after that I sand the insides, and then I blow off the insides, and then I put the magnets in, and then I cut the frames out, and then like there's a ton, and sanding the outside, dusting everything off, like
multiple times.
Right, yeah.
Probably.
Like I have an air compressor that like I'll dust everything off to get it off, and then I go and I usually try to do a bunch at a time or as many as I can at one time.
Assembly line it or something.
As close as I can.
Yeah.
For one person, anyways.
For one person
to
do it
but
by hand.
Exactly, but then
I do the same with the audio editing with this podcast.
Right.
I try and knock out as many episodes one day out of the week.
Right, so that way you're not
otherwise I'm doing a little bit every day, and I'm not feeling like I have a day off.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's very labor intensive, and a lot of the people here that like are doing their craftspeople like crochet plushies and stuff. It's a lot of people are like, oh, this box of holding, like the light colored woods are $65, the walnut colored woods are $75. I say colored, like they're actually that, like they're authentic wood. Yeah, I'm not staining them or anything.
Yeah, you didn't go get some cheap particle board and
paint
it in a color.
Exactly. Like some people are like, yeah, that makes sense, I get that, and then other people are like, oh, that's pretty expensive. It's like well, yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. Like some people that sell these plushies that are size of like a beach ball kind of thing, they're selling it for $125.
There's like 100,000 stitches that go into
that. Exactly. Like it's hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, that's a couple of days
and that's
work.
Minimum.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Because they're not just cranking one out and moving on. It's like, no, that takes days.
And they're making sure the stitches are tight.
Right. And those crochet plushies, like those people put more hours into that one plushie than I put into my boxes. Like, to add for perspective, like, it's just time consuming. And while maybe you can do that and be watching TV or doing what other things
or
without
listening to the
your
Homemade
hand.
podcast.
Hey,
Yeah.
let me add this
Exactly.
shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
For my own podcast.
Exactly.
A lot of people don't understand the time that it goes into making these things, and a lot of people do understand too, which like is also really like I appreciate a lot. Is like especially the people that are like, that's not overpriced. It's just out of my budget.
Exactly.
It's like I respect that. Like that is an awesome response, and thank you for that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
And
Yeah.
I think most people that understand like the crafting side of things as opposed to just the consumer side understand that, because those type of people are used to like, you know, the Amazons or the online stuff where it's just
Right.
this ain't a conveyor belt. This is one by one
Yeah,
by
exactly.
one by one.
Yeah, it's not made in China.
No.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can go up and you can take like some of the, like you make 3 at a time or however many at a time, and you're done. You can take each individual one, and even though you made them all at the same time, they're going to be different.
Right,
There's gonna be small little
Absolutely.
variances and stuff, which I find really cool. Where you don't just go and just buy like, oh, hey, here's one of 80 on the shelf, and I'm just going to get it, just move on. Hey, no, this is actually quality work.
Yeah.
And like the heart and the intelligence that goes into it, the blood, sweat, tears that goes into all of it, and it shows.
Yeah.
Like it's not just like some cheap plastic's going to break.
Right.
This is going to last you forever.
Yeah, well, thank you. And
Yeah.
like I agree, and that's not to myself, but other people that are
Yeah.
doing similar things.
Yeah, I mean, short of an accident, it's like, this is the last dice box you might need.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Barring a catastrophic event like a house fire or you drop it in the road and like a truck runs over it, it even may survive that.
I was thinking about that earlier when you were talking about the bumpy roads and stuff like that. I was like, it falls out the window, you run over it. Most likely, it's probably going to be okay.
I've held it in my head, I'm like, this might actually survive.
You know, this
that.
would be good Instagram content. I'm going to go home and run over some of my stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Everyday wear and tear is not going to face
Right.
these things.
Yeah.
So that's what I found super impressive. Is like I've dropped my phone 3 or 4 times, and I'm like, okay, I've got a cracked screen now, and with this, it's like, it's fine.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that I found impressive. Is
Yeah,
the quality
thank
is
you.
definitely there. You're paying for what you
Right.
get.
And while I do make things to as best quality as I can in that moment, when you purchase one of my boxes or, you know, anybody else's handmade things, ideally, I'll just speak to my own stuff right now. Is like, I hope that you don't need to buy anything else.
Yeah, exactly,
But here's the
yeah.
thing. I want you to buy more stuff.
Yeah, I want you to. Yeah.
And I was thinking about that the other day. Is like, while you don't necessarily need to, like, all the things that I make are wants.
Yes. Oh,
They're
yes.
wants,
Yeah.
not needs. You know, nobody needs these things, but they're awesome and they're fun and people love them and want them. But what I like to do personally is whenever I'm making a new character, and this is my philosophy towards dice too. I don't hoard dice. I don't collect a bunch of different dice.
Okay.
Whenever I start a new character, I get a custom set of dice made for that character.
Oh, okay.
So I will save up that money and then just buy a very
Yeah.
unique set of dice. And it's like, okay,
used to
these
do
are
the
my
same thing.
yeah, these are my Dorn dice, or these are my Desmond dice. All right, these are
I
my
had-
Briz dice.
I had
okay.
way back in the day, I used to have a pair of black and blue for my Paladin of Kelmavor, Paladin against the Undead.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Next campaign, it went to a different character. Next campaign, it went to a different character.
Right.
There's a reason to get more dice. but
Right.
yeah.
There's always reason to get more dice, right?
That's like you telling Toe is I need to refill my dice collection because a lot of it went into this, and like a lot of my spare sets, quote unquote spare sets, are now gone.
Yeah.
So now the bag that I have that had all my dice in it is now like pitiful. There's like almost nothing in it. So
Right.
I've got to get more. She's like, no, you don't. You've got like 5 sets. I'm like, but
Well,
but look, it's empty.
But my point with that is, like, I hope people treat my boxes the same way, like,
Yeah.
you know, in regards to their dice. It's like, I have a box for these different characters that I
Yeah.
keep for myself, and I know a lot of people kind of have a similar philosophy. It's like, I get a set of dice, and that's for this character.
Yes.
And it's like, I hope that people buy my stuff because they have multiple characters. I want people to have multiple ones of my boxes because,
course.
and there are lots. I have lots of return customers that like they're like, oh yeah, I had this and I just love it so much, so I want to get another one, or like I want to get a bigger one, or now I want to get the tower to go with it, and
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, it feels really good and really rewarding when
yeah.
when I get people that say that. What's even more rewarding is when I have somebody come up to me and they're like, yeah, my good friend that I play with has one of your stuff, and they like talk about it all the time. I was like,
nice.
So it's like an unbiased person like saying that, and then oftentimes like they'll buy one too, because envy is the best form of flattery or something.
So from the crafting side, like if anyone else was wanting to get into basically kind of what you're doing or the wood crafting thing for the tabletop gaming community, what would be your first recommendation or the first road bump that you hit that you're like, oh, okay?
Do you mean in regards to if they want
to... Like you weren't expecting to run into this type of thing, or it's like, oh, I should have actually anticipated this, but I hadn't thought of it because I'm new to this.
In the crafting perspective?
Yeah, in the crafting perspective.
Okay. As I referred to earlier, slow growth is better than fast growth because you can adapt a lot easier that way. There will always be road bumps, and there's no way to avoid them.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like starting your own business too. There, almost every single item I make has been adapted in some way because you do something and then you realize, oh, that's not really working as well as I want it to. So then you change it. So I guess my answer to that question is expect there to be mistakes. You will always make mistakes.
I think what's the saying? Grow, adapt, overcome.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it.
Okay, Bear Grylls.
Well, it's
where's your pocket knife?
Yeah, exactly.
Right here.
It got checked at the door. But yeah, with my mini painting, I found the same thing. Is that when I first started, it looked terrible. One of the early podcasts that I was talking on, I was like, don't be afraid to make that mistake, because granted, when it comes to mini painting, it's a little bit more forgiving than cutting wood,
Right, sure.
Because
you can paint over it,
or
paint
on, it looks terrible. If it's a metal mini, I can go strip it.
Sure.
Unless you're using oil-based paints.
Unless you're, there's different hurdles.
Yeah.
But with a mini is ultimately forgiving because you can just reprime it. You can try again.
Yeah.
However, there is that moment to where if I'm painting something for a giveaway or whatever, and I'm like halfway through, I'm like hours into painting this thing, and then I sneeze or my arm cramps.
Sure.
And I like smear the paint. That level of anger and rage that builds inside of me where I got to put stuff down and walk away.
Yep.
I can only imagine that times 10 when you're like cutting wood and all of a sudden you realize you were off by like an eighth of an inch.
Right,
you know? I can only imagine.
Yeah, so I've had plenty of situations where the wood finishes being routed.
Yeah.
And I essentially have a box in the frame, and then I take it out of the router, and there's like a split in the wood that like you can't see unless like you flex the wood or something like that. And so, but it wasn't really exposed until all like, when you're routing out of wood, you're adding weaknesses in the thing, right?
You're cutting chunks out.
Right, yeah. So just by the natural process of any woodworking, when you remove stuff, that becomes weaker to an extent. And compared to its original point is what I mean. But then when there have been plenty of times where I've pulled a frame out of the router and there's a split, and then all three boxes just split in half. And it's like, well, I guess it's better that it happened now rather than after I put in like all the sanding and manual time to it or whatever.
Either that or by the time it got to a customer.
Right,
and then
exactly. And so, and there have been times where I've had boxes that break, and it's a good clean break, and I'm like, okay.
I can glue that together.
I can just glue it back. Right. You hate that you have to, but you're glad that you can.
Yeah, and I guess earlier in the process is better.
Right.
Especially even with mini painting. If I'm just throwing down block colors to get color on the dang thing I mess up,
whatever.
I can go and just touch up and just move on.
After you do like the fine detail work, though, that's not so much.
Or like I drop it hits the carpet, and now there's cat hair stuck to it.
Right. Oh, God.
That's never coming out.
That's right.
That's never coming out. You were talking about you had your box of holding and your what kind of boxes? Like what's your
Yeah, so the different boxes that I make.
How many different boxes do you make?
So for dice boxes, I have 3 different dice boxes that I make. The Click Clock Haversack, which it holds a single set of dice.
Okay.
It's in the shape of a hexagon. And
that's the one that bit me.
Yeah.
Nice.
Small but mighty.
Exactly.
And then the next size up, I call the box of holding. It's my most popular box that I make. It also holds a set of dice with the individual holes in it,
Okay.
but it also has some additional storage on it right above it, so you can actually put a second set of dice there.
Oh, okay.
Or you could put a minifig there, or you could put a bunch of D6s for
Yeah.
if you're doing sneak attack damage, or your D10s if you're doing
Fireball if you're a
fireball
wizard.
damage.
Fireball if
Exactly.
you're a wizard.
Stuff like that. So yeah, and so that one's my most popular one. And then the largest one I call the dice crate. So it's kind of like an extended version of the box of holding, but
Okay.
it has 3 rows of individual dice slots.
Oh, wow.
So it has 21 holes, and then the same additional storage as the box of holding. So you can fit, like, again, your D6s, your minifigs, your pencils, stuff like that inside
nice.
those boxes. And then the nice thing about all 3 of them is the lids do double as dice rolling trays too.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like that, again, back to the functionality aspect. Is
That's
like,
one of the things that first attracted me when we first met at Ditmar's Orchard is the honeycomb looking ones. that
Yeah.
You opened it up and it was a dice
Right.
tray and a dice storage thing together.
exactly. Yeah.
Nice.
And
so
even
the-
when you like put it together, it didn't rattle or give away much. They were in there pretty
Right.
snug still.
Yeah. So like when you shake it up, like there's not enough space between like the lid of the box and the holes that the dice are in for it to come loose and shake around in the box, because that was one of the bumps in the road that I had to figure out, because when I first was doing it, I did have that problem for some of them, and I had to adapt and change it. So I changed the depth of those and whatnot. Again, you can't avoid mistakes. You can only
No,
adapt them. But yeah, so those are my 3 dice boxes. And
Okay.
then in addition to those, I also make Plinko-style dice towers.
Yeah.
And so
the
the-
giant one you have at your booth.
Yeah,
as well.
the
Yeah,
big
I was
one's a
seeing
lot
it
of fun.
happening across the con.
Yeah,
I was like,
probably hearing it too.
yeah, a little bit, yeah.
But yeah, so with the Plinko towers, they can be used by themselves. Like, they don't have to be put together with any of the boxes. Set them up on your table, roll the dice that way. But the cool thing is, like I said earlier, there are magnets on the bottom. So if you have a box of holding and a tower, or a dice crate and a tower, you can magnetize the tower to the lid of the box. So when you roll your dice in your tower, there's a nice little catch tray at the bottom
nice.
of your tower. So like, yeah, it's just compatible with each other.
That probably didn't come out of your brain like fresh out of the pot like that.
No,
That's probably part of that evolution process.
Right,
you were
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about.
So after my friend asked me to make the tower, I was like, okay, how can I make these work with each other? And that's kind of what I
Nice.
came up with. Eventually, I started making D&D character class keychains, because I had a lot of scrap wood, and I was like, what can I do with this scrap wood?
There you
So
go.
I would just cut them into 1/4-inch thick pieces and then laser engrave. Like, at first I was doing little leather punch and punching all the letters into the keychains with the wood, and then I'd burn it to do like a reverse brand.
Yeah.
The top of the wood was burnt, but the letters were impressed into the wood,
Okay.
were clean.
Handmade again.
Again, yeah, handmade. And so that was incredibly tedious, and so
I
I
can
only
only
did that for a
imagine.
little bit. I stopped doing it until I got a laser.
He just kind of said, "Went, this is stupid."
It is, yeah.
Why am I doing
yeah,
this work?
exactly. I was so with the boxes. I when I first started, I would pound in the ONN on the lid for Oakley'snerdnook, and then
Yeah.
on the back I would do the numbers.
Yeah.
So I was doing that with a hammer and a punch to do the numbers and the letters. Again, make sure that like that uniqueness, that individualized
Yeah.
serial number was in those. So I've been doing that since pretty much, I guess, technically box 14.
Oh, okay.
Because the very first 4, like, they were just gifts, and I wasn't expecting it to turn into
Yeah,
into
you didn't
this,
really
so-
think it was going to be a
Right.
thing. You're like, I just think these are cool.
Right, yeah. So if you have one of my box of holding without a number on it,
You've got
it's
some
a pretty,
OG
yeah,
stuff.
you got
Yeah.
some OG stuff.
Hey, tabletop gamers. Thank you for watching this episode of the Hermit's Homebrew. We come out with new episodes every Wednesday. Remember to like, subscribe, and share with your friends as we continue to level up and grow.